The bridge of the USS Relentless hummed with quiet activity as the massive battleship moved through the dark void between stars. Admiral Jake Morrison stood near the center, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the main display. The Third Fleet surrounded his flagship like a pack of metal wolves, 37 ships ready for whatever the galaxy might throw at them. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez sat at her communication station, her fingers dancing across the controls as she monitored dozens of radio frequencies. Most of space was silent, but she had learned to listen for the whispers that others missed. Her job was to catch every signal, every message, every cry for help that crossed the void. The signal came, through just after midnight ship time. Maya frowned as her equipment picked up something unusual on the emergency bands. The transmission was weak, broken by static, but definitely artificial. She boosted the signal strength and ran it through the computer's translation protocols. "Admiral," she called out, her voice cutting through the bridge's quiet hum. "I'm getting something strange on the distress frequencies." Morrison turned toward her station. Captain Ben Carter, his chief tactical officer, looked up from his own displays. The bridge crew knew that look in their admiral's eyes. He was always interested in the unknown. "Put it on speakers," Morrison ordered. The alien voice filled the bridge, speaking in clicks and musical tones that hurt human ears. The computer worked to translate the words, displaying them on the main screen as the message played. "This is the Zilani Confederation vessel Harmony calling any ships in range. We are under attack by the Krex Empire. Our colonies are burning. Our defense fleets are destroyed. We have 2 billion civilians on our homeworld with no way to protect them. The Krex fleet numbers over 300 ships. They will reach our capital system in 6 days. We beg any civilization that receives this message to help us evacuate our people or provide military aid. We can offer payment in technology, resources, or star charts. Please, if anyone can hear this, we are dying." The message repeated 3 more times before cutting to static. The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed what they had heard. Maya checked her instruments and found the signal's origin point. "The transmission came from the Thesia system," she reported. "It's about 4 days away at maximum jump speed." Morrison studied the star charts on the main display. The Thesia system was in unclaimed space, far from any major trade routes. Most human ships never went that far from home, but his fleet was different. The Third Fleet was Earth's deep space patrol, sent to explore and protect human interests in the outer reaches. "What do we know about these Zilani and Krex?" Morrison asked. Captain Carter pulled up files on his tactical display. "Not much, sir. Intelligence has a few reports from merchant ships. The Zilani are traders and explorers. They've been spacefaring for about 3,000 years. Never aggressive, never caused problems for anyone. The Krex are different. They're conquerors. They've wiped out 6 smaller civilizations in the past century." Dr. Amanda Walsh, the fleet's chief science officer, stepped forward from her station. "Admiral, I've been studying what little data we have on both species. The Zilani appear to be peaceful, with advanced technology focused on exploration and terraforming. Their star charts could be incredibly valuable for human expansion. The Krex are brutal but predictable. They use overwhelming numbers and fear tactics." Morrison nodded slowly. He was thinking, weighing options. The crew waited. They knew their admiral well enough to stay quiet when he was making important decisions. Colonel Lisa Hayes, commander of the fleet's Marine contingent, spoke up from her position near the tactical displays. "Sir, we've got 18,000 Marines across the fleet and enough firepower to level a small moon. But 300 enemy ships is a lot, even for us." "How long to reach the Thesia system?" Morrison asked. 4 days, sir," replied Commander Rick Stone from the navigation station. "But we'd arrive right as the Krex fleet gets there, no time to scout or prepare." Morrison walked to the main display and stared at the star chart. The Thesia system glowed red on the screen, marking it as a potential combat zone. Around it, dozens of other systems showed the spread of human colonies and trade routes. If the Krex were allowed to destroy the Zilani, they might keep expanding. Eventually, they could threaten human space. But there was something else. Morrison had not become an admiral by ignoring opportunities. The Zalani message mentioned star charts and technology. Earth needed both if humanity was going to compete with the older civilizations. Maya, can you boost our transmission power? Morrison asked. Yes, sir. We can reach the Thesia system if we use the main communications array. Morrison made his decision. Send a message to the Zalani. Tell them the Terran Federation Third Fleet is responding to their distress call. We'll arrive in 4 days, but make it clear that our help comes with a price. Captain Carter looked surprised. What kind of price, Admiral? Complete access to their star charts and terraforming technology. Permanent human bases in their territory for defense purposes, and exclusive trading rights with Earth for the next 50 years. Morrison's voice was calm but firm. If they want our help, they'll pay for it. Dr. Walsh frowned. Sir, they're facing extinction. Isn't that a bit harsh? Morrison turned to face his senior staff. Doctor, humanity didn't claw its way off Earth and into space by being charitable. These aliens have something we need, and they need something we can provide. That's not charity, that's business. He walked back to his command chair and sat down. Besides, if we're going to fight the Kreks, we better get something out of it besides gratitude. Gratitude doesn't build starships or feed colonies. Maya worked at her station, preparing the transmission. Message ready, Admiral. Send. It then set course for Thesia. Maximum speed. Morrison leaned back in his chair. And send word to all ship captains. Staff meeting in 2 hours. We're going to war, people. Time to show the galaxy what humans do best. The USS Relentless and her escorts changed course, their engines lighting up the darkness as they raced toward a distant star system. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that its children were about to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most human way possible. Through violence, determination, and a deal that heavily favored Earth. The Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thesia system exactly 4 days later. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Relentless, watching the tactical display as his ship spread into combat formation. What he saw made him frown. The Zalani homeworld burned in the distance. Dozens of elegant alien ships fought desperately against a massive Kreks fleet that surrounded them like sharks around wounded prey. The enemy vessels were ugly things, all sharp angles and heavy armor plating. They looked like they were built for one purpose only, destroying everything in their path. Jesus, whispered Captain Carter as he studied the sensor readings. The Kreks have over 400 ships out there. Intelligence was wrong about the numbers. Commander Stone worked frantically at his station, trying to get a clear picture of the battle. Sir, I'm reading massive damage to the Zalani defense platforms. They've lost at least 60% of their fleet. The remaining ships are falling back toward the planet. Morrison nodded grimly. The Zalani were brave, but they were clearly losing. Their ships moved with grace and speed, but they lacked the firepower to seriously damage the Kreks vessels. It was like watching dancers fight against tanks. Any response to our message? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez checked her communications array. Yes, sir. The Zalani government has agreed to all our terms. They're begging us to hurry. Good. Time to make an entrance. Morrison turned to Captain Nicole Brooks, who commanded the destroyer USS Vengeance. Her ship was fast, deadly, and perfect for what he had in mind. Captain Brooks, take your ship and show these Kreks what human weapons can do. Brooks smiled coldly. She was known throughout the fleet for her aggressive tactics and complete lack of fear. With pleasure, Admiral. What are my rules of engagement? There are no rules. Kill them all. The USS Vengeance broke away from the main fleet and activated its stealth systems. Human ships were different from most alien designs. Where other races built their vessels for speed or elegance, humans built theirs to survive and fight in the worst conditions possible. Every system had backups. Every weapon was designed to keep working even when the ship was falling apart. Brooks brought her ship up behind a massive Kreks battlecruiser that was hammering a group of Zalani frigates. The enemy vessel was 3 times larger than her destroyer, but she did not care. Size meant nothing if you could not see death coming. Fire all tubes, she ordered. 20 nuclear-tipped torpedoes launched from the Vengeance's weapon bays. The Krek ship's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. They were not designed to handle nuclear explosions at point-blank range. The first torpedo punched through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper. The second and third torpedoes followed, ripping massive holes in the battlecruiser's hull. By the time the 20th torpedo hit, the Krek's vessel was breaking apart in a ball of radioactive fire. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers. Every ship in the system saw it. The Zilani cheered over their communications channels. The Krek's fleet suddenly went very quiet. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself," came a harsh voice over the radio. The translation computers marked it as coming from the largest Krek ship, probably their fleet commander. Captain Brooks opened a channel to broadcast her response to every ship in the system. "This is Captain Nicole Brooks of the Terran Federation. Destroyer USS Vengeance. You are attacking our allies. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The Krek's commander's laughter came through the speakers like the sound of grinding metal. "Terrans, we have never heard of your pathetic species. You have destroyed one ship through treachery and stealth. We have 400. Prepare to die. Primitives." Brooks looked at her tactical officer. "How many ships is he sending?" 15 heavy cruisers, sir. They're moving to intercept us." "Perfect. Let them come." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. The 15 Krek ships expected to find a single human destroyer trying to run away. Instead, they found the USS Vengeance waiting for them in the middle of an asteroid field, all weapons powered up and ready for battle. The Kreks opened fire first, sending hundreds of energy beams and plasma bolts toward the human ship. Brooks spun her vessel between the asteroids, using them as cover while her crew returned fire with everything they had. Railguns, missile launchers, laser batteries, and torpedo tubes all spoke at once. The Krek ships were tough, but they had never fought anything like humans before. When the Vengeance took hits that would have crippled most vessels, her crew just rerouted power and kept fighting. When her main engines were damaged, they switched to backup thrusters. When her shields failed, they used the ship's thick armor to absorb damage. Lieutenant Commander Paul Green, the ship's engineering officer, worked miracles in the engine room. "Captain, I've got main power back online, but we're running on fumes." "Give me 5 minutes and I can get the jump drive working." "We're not running anywhere," Brooks replied as she watched another Krek ship explode under her guns. "We're here to make a point." The point was simple. Humans did not give up. Ever. When other species would have retreated or surrendered, humans kept fighting until either they won or everyone was dead. The Kreks had never encountered that kind of determination before. By the time Admiral Morrison arrived with the main fleet, Captain Brooks had destroyed 8 of the 15 Krek ships and badly damaged the rest. Her destroyer looked like it had been through a meat grinder, with hull breaches, sparking electronics, and several decks completely destroyed. But she was still fighting. Morrison opened communications with both the Krek's fleet commander and the Zilani government at the same time. To the aliens who had called for help, he confirmed that Earth would honor their agreement and protect their world. To the Kreks, he transmitted detailed sensor scans of their destroyed ships along with tactical analysis of their weaknesses. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Federation 3rd Fleet," he broadcast on all frequencies. "The Zilani Confederation is now under Earth's protection. Any attack on their territory will be considered an act of war against humanity. However, we are reasonable people. Withdraw now and we will discuss terms for ending this conflict peacefully." The Krek's commander, Warlord Vextar, was furious. "You dare threaten the Krek's empire with your tiny fleet? We will crush you like insects." Morrison smiled coldly. "You're welcome to try. But first, let me share something with the other civilizations listening to this broadcast." He transmitted the complete tactical specifications of Krek ships, including their weaknesses, standard formations, and supply requirements. Within hours, every species in the sector would know exactly how to fight and defeat the Krek's empire. "Your choice, Warlord," Morrison said. "Peace, or we turn your entire empire into everyone else's target practice." The battle for Thessia was about to become something much bigger. 3 days after Admiral Morrison's ultimatum, the Krek's empire sent their response. It came in the form of 500 warships jumping into the Thessia system, led by Grand Admiral Thekmor aboard the massive dreadnought Bone Crusher. The alien commander had conquered 17 different species and had never tasted defeat. Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Relentless, watching the enemy fleet deploy. His own 37 ships looked pathetically small compared to the Krek's armada, but he showed no concern. Around him, his bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, preparing for what many would call a hopeless battle. "Sir, they're broadcasting," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "Put it through." The harsh voice of Grand Admiral Thekmore filled the bridge. "Humans, you have made a grave mistake interfering with the Krek's empire. I am Thekmore, conqueror of worlds, destroyer of the weak. I have come to show you the price of defying us. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." Morrison activated his own broadcast, sending his response not just to the Krek's fleet but to every listening post and communication relay in the sector. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison. We don't surrender, we don't retreat, and we sure as hell don't die quick. If you want a fight, you've got one." The first phase of Morrison's plan began immediately. Instead of engaging the main Krek's fleet, he ordered his ships to scatter throughout the system. This confused the aliens, who expected humans to either run away or form traditional battle lines. Instead, the human vessels disappeared among asteroids, gas clouds, and the wreckage of earlier battles. Colonel Lisa Hayes led the ground assault phase from her command ship. Her Marines had been studying Krek's tactics for days, learning everything they could about the enemy. What they discovered surprised them. The Kreks were physically strong and well-armed, but they had never fought anyone who refused to stay beaten. The first target was a Krek supply depot on one of Thessia's moons. Sergeant Tony Miller's squad landed their assault shuttle in the middle of the enemy base and immediately came under heavy fire. The Krek soldiers were 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor, and carried weapons that could punch through tank steel. Miller's squad was outgunned, outnumbered, and completely surrounded. Any sensible military force would have retreated or called for backup. Instead, Miller ordered his Marines to advance. "Remember your training," he shouted over the sound of enemy fire. "They're big, they're tough, but they've never fought humans before. Show them what Earth's children can do." The Marines charged directly into the Krek's positions. When their rifles ran out of ammunition, they switched to pistols. When the pistols were empty, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their bare hands and whatever they could find. The Kreks had never seen anything like it. One Marine, Private Danny Walsh, lost his left arm to a Krek's plasma blast but kept fighting with his right. Another, Corporal Helen Ford, used a broken piece of alien equipment as a club when her weapons were destroyed. The Krek's soldiers, despite their size and strength, began to panic. They had conquered other species through fear and overwhelming force, but humans seemed to get stronger when they were hurt. In space, Captain Carter was implementing the second phase of Morrison's strategy. Instead of fighting the Krek's fleet directly, he was attacking their support systems. Human ships struck at enemy supply lines, communication relays, and repair facilities. Every attack was swift, brutal, and designed to cause maximum confusion. The destroyer USS Defiant, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Paul Green, demonstrated human engineering at its finest. The ship took direct hits from 3 Krek's heavy cruisers, losing main power, weapons control, and half her crew. Any other vessel would have been considered destroyed. Green and his surviving crew switched to manual controls, rerouted power through damaged systems, and continued fighting using backup weapons and sheer determination. When the Krek ships moved in for the kill, they found the Defiant still shooting back with whatever guns were still working. "Sir, we've lost everything except the emergency torpedo launcher," reported his weapons officer. "Then load it and fire," Green replied calmly, as if losing most of his ship was just another day at the office. Dr. Amanda Walsh, working from her laboratory aboard the Relentless, made a crucial discovery while studying captured Krek's equipment. The enemy's entire military doctrine was based on intimidation and superior numbers. They had never developed tactics for fighting an enemy that refused to be intimidated. "Admiral," she reported over the communication system, "I've found something important. Krek ships have no redundant systems. When they take damage, they can't adapt like we can. They expect enemies to either run away or die quickly." Morrison nodded grimly. That explains why they keep making the same mistakes. They don't know how to fight a real war. The psychological warfare began immediately. Captain Nicole Brooks used her ship's communication array to broadcast fake distress calls from Krek's vessels, causing confusion in their ranks. Commander Rick Stone deployed sensor decoys that made single human ships appear as entire fleets on enemy scanners. But the most effective psychological weapon was simply human behavior. When Krek's boarding parties expected to find defeated enemies, they instead found humans who kept fighting even when their ships were falling apart around them. When they damaged human vessels beyond any reasonable hope of survival, those same ships kept coming back for more. Grand Admiral Thekmore watched his forces slowly lose their confidence. His warriors, who had terrorized the galaxy for decades, were beginning to fear a species they had never heard of a week ago. The humans fought like creatures possessed, treating devastating damage as merely an inconvenience. Ambassador Zel Andra of the Zilani watched the battle from her command center on Thessia Prime. She had seen many species fight for survival over the centuries, but nothing like this. The humans separated warfare from personal emotion in a way that terrified even their allies. She watched human medics treat wounded Krek's prisoners with the same care they gave their own injured, then immediately returned to planning the enemy's destruction. They showed mercy and brutality with equal efficiency, switching between the two as the situation required. "What kind of species are these humans?" she asked her aide. "I believe, Ambassador, they are exactly what the galaxy has been waiting for," came the reply. Meanwhile, Morrison was preparing the final phase of his plan. Operation Prometheus would combine human technological innovation with Zilani navigational data to strike at the heart of Krek's power. But first he needed to make sure the enemy was properly softened up. He opened a channel to Grand Admiral Thekmore. Still feeling confident about conquering humanity, the alien's response was filled with rage and growing uncertainty. "Your tricks will not save you, human. I have 500 ships. And I have something you don't," Morrison replied. "I have humans. And we're just getting started." Grand Admiral Thekmore paced the bridge of his flagship like a caged animal. For 2 weeks he had been fighting the humans and nothing made sense anymore. His forces still outnumbered the enemy by more than 10 to 1, but somehow he was losing ground every day. The latest reports made his blood boil. A human heavy cruiser called the USS Retribution had engaged 3 of his best dreadnoughts simultaneously. Captain Laura Kim's ship was supposed to be destroyed within minutes. Instead, it had rammed one of his vessels while the crew used construction, equipment and mining tools as weapons. The sight of humans turning civilian hardware into instruments of war had spread panic throughout his entire fleet. "Sir," his communications officer reported nervously, "we're getting reports from the outer patrol groups. They're seeing human reinforcements everywhere, dozens of new ships appearing on sensors." Thekmore studied the tactical display. The humans seemed to have called in massive reinforcements overnight. Enemy contacts appeared throughout the system, always just at the edge of sensor range. Every time his ships moved to investigate, they found nothing but debris and electronic interference. What he did not know was that Commander Rick Stone had developed what the humans called ghost protocols. Using clever manipulation of sensor data and debris fields, single human ships could appear as entire fleets on Krek's scanners. The psychological effect was devastating. Krek's commanders began seeing human reinforcements everywhere, never certain which contacts were real threats. Meanwhile, Admiral Morrison was conducting a very different kind of warfare. His communications array was busy sending messages to governments throughout the galaxy, sharing detailed information about Krek's weaknesses, and inviting other species to join what he called the Anti-Krek's Alliance. The response was overwhelming. The Altarian Republic, whose colonies had been threatened by Krek's expansion for decades, immediately pledged 3 battle fleets to the cause. The Centauri Trade Union offered to cut off all commerce with Krek's territory. A dozen smaller civilizations requested human military advisors and protection treaties. Dr. Walsh continued her research into Krek's psychology and biology, making discoveries that changed everything. She found that most galactic species had evolved on stable worlds with predictable climates and abundant resources. They developed cooperation and advanced technology to overcome environmental challenges. Humans were different. Earth had tried, to kill them for millions of years through ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless other disasters. Instead of breaking under the pressure, humans had adapted to thrive in chaos. They developed aggression, flexibility, and the psychological ability to keep functioning when everything went wrong. "Admiral," Dr. Walsh reported from her laboratory, "I think I understand why we're so effective against the Kreks. They evolved as pack hunters on a world with limited predators. They're used to winning through intimidation and overwhelming numbers. When that doesn't work, they don't know what to do." Morrison nodded as he studied her findings. "So they panic when they meet something that fights harder when it's hurt." "Exactly. And there's something else. I've been monitoring their communications. The Kreks Empire is starting to fracture. Several client species are rebelling, inspired by our resistance." This was even better news than Morrison had hoped. The humans were not just defeating the Kreks military, they were destroying the Empire's credibility throughout the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear for centuries were suddenly finding the courage to fight back. Ambassador Zelandra requested a private meeting with Morrison aboard the Relentless. The Zelani diplomat had been watching human operations with growing amazement and something that might have been fear. "Admiral," she began carefully, "my government is grateful for your protection, but we need to discuss what happens after this war ends." Morrison gestured for her to continue. He could guess what was coming. "Your species fights unlike anything we have ever seen. You show mercy to prisoners and civilians, but your approach to warfare itself is terrifying. My people are beginning to wonder if we have simply traded one conqueror for another." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Ambassador, let me be clear about something. Earth has no interest in conquering the Zelani or anyone else. Conquest is expensive and difficult to maintain. We prefer profitable partnerships. But your terms for our alliance are quite demanding." "They are, and they're also fair. We're providing military protection, technological assistance, and diplomatic support. In return, we get trading rights, technology sharing, and strategic bases. Everyone benefits." Zelandra was quiet for a moment. "The Kreks demanded tribute and submission. You demand partnership and profit. I suppose that is an improvement." "It's the difference between a parasite and a symbiont," Morrison replied. "Parasites eventually kill their hosts. Symbiotic relationships make both parties stronger." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Carter. "Admiral, we're getting reports from throughout Krek space. Their empire is collapsing faster than we expected. At least 8 client species have declared independence. 3 more are requesting human military assistance." Morrison smiled coldly. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. "Send representatives to meet with the rebel groups. Offer them the same deal we gave the Zelani, protection and support in exchange for alliance terms." Over the following days, the situation in Krek space deteriorated rapidly. Grand Admiral Thekmore found himself fighting a multi-front war as rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds. His communications with the Krek's homeworld became increasingly desperate, as he tried to explain how a handful of human ships had triggered the collapse of their entire empire. The breaking point came when Captain Danny Walsh's corvette intercepted and decoded Krek's military communications. The enemy was planning to use biological weapons against civilian populations on rebel worlds, hoping to terrorize other species back into submission. Morrison's response was swift and brutal. He transmitted the intercepted plans to every major civilization in the galaxy, along with detailed intelligence about Krek's biological weapons programs. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had remained neutral suddenly demanded action against the Krek's empire. The Galactics Commerce Council imposed total economic sanctions. Military alliances that had existed for centuries mobilized their fleets. Within hours, the Kreks found themselves facing not just human forces but a coalition that represented most of known space. Thekmore's final message to his homeworld was filled with desperation. "The humans have turned the entire galaxy against us. They fight like demons, but they think like merchants. Every battle makes them richer and us poorer. Every victory brings them new allies while we lose old ones." The response from Krek's high command was simple and brutal. Thekmor was relieved of command and ordered to destroy the human fleet or die trying. His replacement would arrive within days to finish what he had failed to accomplish. But Morrison was not waiting for the next Krek's commander. Operation Prometheus was ready to begin, and it would end the war in a way that would make humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. The Kreks had wanted to fight humans on their terms. Now they would learn what happened when humans fought on their own terms. Lieutenant Rodriguez intercepted the Krek's command changes and reported them to Morrison. "Sir, it looks like they're sending someone even more aggressive to replace Thekmor." Morrison nodded grimly. "Good. Aggressive enemies make more mistakes, and we're about to give them the biggest mistake of their lives." The final phase of the war was about to begin, and Morrison intended to make it memorable. The replacement for Grand Admiral Thekmor arrived with fanfare and fury. War Chief Krelnax commanded the largest Krek's fleet ever assembled, 800 ships strong, including their most powerful dreadnought, the Death's Edge. He broadcast his intentions to every listening post in the sector. "I am Krelnax, the Krek's Empire's greatest warrior. I have come to finish what the weak Thekmor could not. The human infestation ends today. Their homeworld will burn. Their colonies will be ash. Their species will be remembered only as a cautionary tale." Admiral Morrison listened to the threat from his command chair aboard the USS Relentless. Around him, his bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, making final preparations for Operation Prometheus. After weeks of fighting, they were ready to end this war permanently. "Impressive speech," Morrison commented to Captain Carter. "Too bad he doesn't understand what he's walking into." The Theseus system had been transformed during the long battle. What looked like empty space was actually filled with automated defense platforms, hidden minefields, and supply caches. Every asteroid, every piece of debris, every orbital station had been turned into a weapon or a sensor post. The humans had spent weeks turning the entire system into a trap. Morrison opened a channel to Krelnax. "This is Admiral Morrison. You have one chance to withdraw your forces and negotiate a peaceful resolution. Otherwise, you'll discover why the rest of the galaxy is starting to fear humans." Krelnax's laughter was like grinding metal. "Humans do not frighten the Kreks. You are soft creatures from a weak world. Your tiny fleet cannot stand against the might of 800 warships." "You're right about one thing," Morrison replied calmly. "We can't match your numbers. That's why we're not going to fight fair." The battle began when Krelnax ordered his entire fleet to charge directly at Thesia Prime, expecting to overwhelm the human defenders through sheer mass. Instead, his ships flew into the most sophisticated trap ever created by human military engineering. The first mines detonated when the Krek's vanguard was halfway to the planet. Nuclear explosions lit up space as dozens of enemy ships were caught in carefully planned kill zones. But this was just the beginning. Captain Carter coordinated the defense from his tactical station. Phase 1 complete. Enemy formation disrupted. Initiating Phase 2. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the system came online simultaneously. Railgun batteries that had been disguised as asteroid mining equipment opened fire on the scattered Kreks ships. Missile launchers hidden inside derelict cargo haulers unleashed swarms of smart torpedoes. Every piece of innocent-looking debris suddenly revealed itself as a weapon. War Chief Krelnax watched his fleet take massive casualties and realized he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not been running or hiding during the previous weeks. They had been preparing a battlefield, where every advantage belonged to them. "All ships pull back to defensive formation," he ordered. But it was too late. The human trap was already closing. Captain Nicole Brooks led the USS Vengeance in a coordinated strike against the Krek's command ship. Her destroyer had been rebuilt after the earlier battle and was now armed with experimental weapons designed specifically to kill Krek's vessels. She dove through the enemy formation like a shark among minnows, her ship's guns speaking death with every shot. But the real surprise came when Krelnax tried to use his numerical advantage. Instead of facing 37 human ships, he found himself fighting what appeared to be over 200. Commander Stone's ghost protocols had been perfected, creating sensor phantoms that looked completely real to Krek's equipment. The psychological effect was devastating. Krek ship commanders found themselves shooting at targets that did not exist while real human vessels attacked from unexpected directions. Fear spread through the alien fleet as they realized they were fighting an enemy that could appear anywhere and strike from nowhere. Lieutenant Commander Paul Green's engineering team had prepared the ultimate demonstration of human ingenuity. When the Krek's fleet tried to retreat, they discovered that their escape routes were blocked by what appeared to be massive force fields. In reality, Green had used industrial mining equipment to create artificial gravity wells that trapped enemy ships in place. Dr. Walsh monitored Krek's communications from her laboratory. "Admiral, I'm reading massive confusion in their command structure. Multiple ships are reporting contradictory sensor data. Some captains are requesting permission to retreat. Others are calling for reinforcements that don't exist." The climax came when War Chief Krelnax decided to end the battle through single combat. Following ancient Krek's tradition, he challenged Admiral Morrison to a duel between their flagships. Winner takes all. Morrison's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. "Honor duels are for species that can afford them. We're here to win." Instead of accepting the challenge, Morrison ordered every human ship to concentrate fire on the Death's Edge simultaneously. The massive Krek's dreadnought, designed to withstand attacks from single vessels, was overwhelmed by coordinated strikes from the entire human fleet. Krelnax's ship broke apart under the assault, but not before he sent one final message. "You fight without honor, humans. You use tricks and deception instead of strength." Morrison's reply was broadcast to every ship in the system. "Honor is a luxury for peacetime. In war, the only thing that matters is protecting your people and defeating your enemies. We do both very well." The destruction of the Death's Edge broke Krek's resistance completely. The surviving ships surrendered rather than face total annihilation. War Chief Krelnax was captured alive, though his pride was thoroughly destroyed. The aftermath of the battle changed the galaxy forever. Within days, representatives from dozens of civilizations arrived at Thessia to negotiate with the humans. The Terran Federation had proven itself as the sector's new dominant military power, but Morrison was more interested in building economic relationships than conquering territory. Ambassador Zelandra hosted the first Galactic Security Council meeting 6 months later. Admiral Morrison represented humanity as the newest major power, with formal defense treaties spanning 15 different species. The Zelani had become humanity's strongest advocates, sharing their advanced technology freely with their protectors. Dr. Walsh's research papers on human military psychology became required reading at every military academy in known space. Her work on Deathworld adaptation strategies explained why humans were so effective in warfare and helped other species develop better defensive strategies. The former Krek's empire was divided among the species they had oppressed, with human military advisors helping to maintain peace and stability. Krelnax himself was put to work designing defensive systems for former Krek's colonies, his knowledge of conquest tactics proving useful for prevention. The final scene took place aboard the USS Relentless as the ship prepared to leave Thessia for humanity's next assignment. Morrison stood on the bridge reading reports of new opportunities throughout the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans a year ago were now requesting military advisors, protection treaties, and trade agreements. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with the latest communication summary. "Sir, we're getting requests for assistance from 47 different systems. Pirates, slavers, territorial disputes, ancient defense networks gone rogue. Everyone wants human help." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. The galaxy spent 10,000 years looking for heroes to protect them from the monsters. Instead, they got us. We're not heroes, Rodriguez. We're just very good at solving problems. What's our next destination, Admiral? Morrison looked at the star charts showing dozens of potential missions. Each one represented an opportunity to expand human influence and build profitable relationships. Set course for the Centauri Nebula. There are reports of an automated defense grid that's been attacking civilian ships for the past century. Time to show the galaxy what humans do with problems everyone else calls impossible. The USS Relentless and her escorts turned toward deep space, their engines lighting up the darkness. Behind them, the Thesia system continued its peaceful existence under human protection. Ahead of them lay a galaxy full of opportunities for a species that had learned to turn every challenge into an advantage. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or saviors, but as the galaxy's most reliable problem solvers. And business was very good indeed.